Well, happy Tuesday to everybody, and welcome to another episode of Meet Me in the Breakroom. We are so glad to have with us again today our dear friend, sister, and woman of God, Dr. Krisha Hawkins. Welcome back to the Breakroom.
Thank you, Pastor.
We are so glad to have you with us today. And tell us, just for those who may not have had an opportunity to see you before, tell us your background. Today we're going to be talking about human resources, having some of those courageous conversations with your boss. We're going to talk about negotiating salaries and understanding how to communicate your value and your worth. Tell us some of your experience in the HR department and kind of what you do day to day.
So, as Pastor said, I am Krisha. A lot of people know me by Angela, so either one, Hawkins. I was not a doctor when I came into this world, so I don't get stuck or hung up on those titles or different things like that, so it's all right with me. I can take it or leave it, it's fine. But I've been a nurse for over 20-something, about 23 years now, and I've been a registered nurse. And I kind of got into HR in a very strange way, but however that was, I became an HR manager of over 7 states, organizations in over 7 states, and just really enjoyed my work that I did there and became career development over those 7 states. And now I reside in executive career development for the nation, the largest healthcare organization in the nation. And so it's a great opportunity to be able to develop others and work with others in the healthcare arena and the executive arena as well.
Very good. So what are some of the conversations people should begin having, employees should have with employers, HR departments, as it relates to benefits, salary negotiations? What are some of the things people need to be discussing at this time of the year? We're at the end of the year, getting ready to come into 2021. Prayerfully, it's going to be a much better year than 2020.
Yes.
But what are some of the conversations people should have on their mind at this time?
Oh my God! Well, first of all, it's just a blessing that we've made it this far.
Absolutely, it is
into the year.
A testimony to the faithfulness of God.
Yes, with a job.
Right. With a job, with our
job.
life, health, strength, all of those
Yes.
things are not to be taken for granted.
Not to be taken lightly, and to be gainfully employed.
Yes.
So a lot of the great thing about it is that a lot of the HR systems and structures now have been automated.
Mm-hmm.
So the things that we once had to go and sit down into an HR office and do for, if you're in a larger organization, that is, you can just log into your HR system and do those things. Most people, when they think of going into the HR, they think of the open season. And for your open benefit season, those are the things that you do when you want to make changes to your healthcare plan. And maybe you want to change from one healthcare plan to the other, or you opt to do a different insurance or different things like that. But there are other things that you really should consider doing that you can do outside of your open season that you can do in your HR. And things like that would be, did you get married? And if you got married, then you probably are not changing your insurance because you've already done that. But do you need to look at changing your retirement benefits? Does what you opted for maybe your retirement plan, and that's assuming that your job offers a retirement plan, does it make sense for you anymore? Some people, when they first started their job, they may have had like maybe 2% that they were giving, or maybe 1% that they were opting into their retirement plan, and they've never changed that anytime since then. And so they're leaving money on the table. So one of the things that I always recommend that people do is that they go in and that they annually look at how much they're contributing to their retirement. I'm not giving any tax advice because I'm not a tax advisor. And oh my gosh, if I was, I'd probably have a whole lot more money and this would be a different conversation.
Absolutely.
But that's definitely something that you want to look at the end of the year as you start planning. One of the things that I really, really want to encourage the people to do, and especially the people of God to do, is do not be intimidated by thinking that you don't make enough money to start looking at planning for your future retirement.
Absolutely.
You would really be surprised at how little it takes to contribute and how the structure is set up to where you can contribute to your retirement if your job offers you some sort of match. And also, it's free to check. So that's one of the things that I always say. You don't have to be in an open season. You can go in anytime and you can look at your retirement benefits and you can see if what you were doing then still makes sense now. And I always say, do it at least once a year.
I know another thing that's important is checking who you have named as beneficiary, because many times that can change over the course of time, over the course of years.
Absolutely.
Someone that you've named may have passed on. So it's important to make sure that you have the right people in place.
Marriage or divorce.
Absolutely.
It happens.
Absolutely.
Even in the church.
Maybe the birth of another child.
Absolutely.
You know, even those
Absolutely.
things. Yes, divorce does happen even in the church. And so you've got to make sure that you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's and making sure you're building a future for yourself and for your family.
For your family. Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
And then you also want to make sure that your family knows where that information can be located.
Absolutely.
So this is a really, really good time to update that information and share that information with your family. I keep a little file and I email it to my family. And I update it every year.
Yes.
And that file is called If I'm Gone. And they know that this is the file that they go to if I'm gone. It just relieves a lot of stress. And it's easier to have that conversation while you're here than it is when you're gone. And it's amazing. We just saw this year, unfortunately, Chadwick Boseman, the Black Panther, who we all loved. Absolutely. He passed unexpectedly. Well, it was unexpected to us. But the people who were close to him, they knew what he was going to. But we see now that his wife was dealing with going through probate.
Yes.
And probate lawyers, they take up a lot of money in the courts because of probate, because he didn't have a will.
Right.
So it's things like that that you just really want to, at the end of the year, when it comes to your HR, you just want to kind of put those things in
absolutely. And he played so many major roles with 42, with James Brown, with Black Panther. And, you know, when you work so hard, and he knew what he was dealing with, but worked so hard, he left a legacy behind, you know, but then to have that up in the air is a tragic situation. So many times it's not that people haven't done the work, but it's making sure you're protecting what you've worked so hard to achieve for your family. I know one of the things you mentioned a while ago was not being intimidated. To be able to speak with your employers, with your employees, having those conversations back and forth about benefits, about promotion, about just the value you bring, you know, the things you bring to the table. And so annual performance reviews, those should be a part of every work situation. What are some ways people can kind of take the tension and the anxiety away from those annual performance reviews? What should we be looking to provide as employers? What should people be looking to ask and receive as employees?
So, you know, the performance, the truth is that people often think that their employers or their supervisors should be intimately involved or keenly aware of everything that they've done throughout the performance period. While that might be true, that's not the reality.
Right.
your supervisor is very, very busy.
Right.
And it depends on how many people that they supervise and how many other tasks that they're doing. Sometimes I sit down and I can't remember what I did yesterday.
Right. This morning.
Absolute truth. So the thing to do to prepare for that and to support your rating is to start measuring now. I always say, measure what matters.
Yes.
And if you don't measure it, then what you're saying is it doesn't matter. Again, I really want to emphasize that it does not matter where you are in a leadership or in an organizational structure. Even if you work for McDonald's, you can measure the work that you do. If you're a cashier at McDonald's and your drawer is balanced every day, then you can measure that your drawer is balanced 100% of the time. If you work for McDonald's and you get customers that say that you gave good customer service, then you can measure how many customers said that you gave good customer service. I want us to take accountability and responsibility for doing that. One of the templates and the formats that we often use to do that is called the SMART format. And that's the measurement that we use, and it's called SMART, and it's an acronym, and it stands for be specific, use a measurable format, make sure it's attainable, make sure it's realistic, and it's time measurement. So a good example of that is, I always say, I want to lose weight. So what does that mean? Just to say, I want to lose weight.
Right.
What does that mean? That means absolutely nothing. Just to say I want to lose weight. But if I come to you, Pastor, and I say, I want to lose 5 pounds by January 5th.
That's measurable.
That's measurable.
That's specific.
That's
realistic.
It's
Absolutely.
time.
Yes.
So if January 5th, I come back to you and I have not lost 5 pounds, then you can hold me accountable to that.
That's right. That's right.
So that is what you want to do when you're doing your performance goals. And this is the same thing for your employee. If you are an employer and you have an employee, you cannot hold them accountable for something when you have not let them know what the expectation is.
Right.
If you've not told them what the expectation is, don't get frustrated when they're not doing what you expect them to do.
Right.
And I want to say that again. If you've not told them, don't expect them to be a mind reader.
Yes.
So this is where there's often a gap of miscommunication in performance when either the employer has not communicated the expectation or the employee has not helped the employer to measure it. So it's often a partnership. So when those objectives are measured, that employee can come to the table at the end of the year and say, this is what I've done, this is how I've measured it. I want to say that when it comes to performance appraisals, it is not enough just to do your job if you're looking for more money. That is your reasonable service to the organization.
Say that part again.
It's your reasonable. Coming to work and just doing your job, that is reasonable. That's what they pay you to do.
Right.
In order to get more, you must do more. And I don't know any other way to put it.
Yeah.
In order to get more, you must demonstrate that you have done more. So I think those are the conversations that you should really have going into it. And also, what does more look like? Does more look like quantity or does more look like quality? For some people, more looks like quantity. So does it look like you made more widgets or does it look like you made better widgets? And those are the conversations that really need to take place. So going into the performance year, and I'm speaking now to people who may be trying to prepare to get their ducks in a row to get a raise for that next period. You want to go into that conversation with your SMART goals, the things that you have done, those things that you have measured. Because what you don't want to do is talk from a position of, give me more money because I need. The organization is not in business to meet your needs. As unfortunate or fortunate as it is, it's a social partnership. So it's not just one-sided. You meet one another's needs, but it's not just based on your needs. So you really want to speak from a position of how you meet one another's needs. And that's much better.
I know one of the things too that I've discussed with some of my employees is sometimes we say communication is the issue, but sometimes communication is not the issue, comprehension is. And so sometimes as an employer, you can think you're being clear in your communication, and it may be clear to you, but the person you're speaking to may have different terminology, different ways of expressing things. And so sometimes because you think you've communicated clearly in your terminology, what you're saying and what they're understanding may not be the same thing. So one of the things I've learned to do is have them to repeat back to me their understanding of what my expectations are. And that way, if there's any misunderstanding, then we can go ahead and clear that up from the beginning, and we're not both moving off of assumption.
Yes, ma'am. I think another important part of it is when you're setting goals, performance goals, is you always want to include the employee in the process.
Sure, absolutely.
Because they are much more versed in the work that they're doing than the actual person that is on that higher level.
Right. And sometimes as employees, as employers, we may put processes in place that make sense to us from the outside looking in. But for someone having to do that every day, our processes may not always make sense. And so I've learned to give autonomy to people, you know, to build their own systems and to build their own structures that work for them in order to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. And I've also found when you do bring employees into goal setting, into performance evaluations, those kinds of things, many times they're harder on themselves than we are on them.
Ownership.
You know, absolutely. And so I've found that it's a win-win situation, you know, when you can really allow them to set some goals for themselves. They end up producing for the company, but they feel like it's a get to and not a have to.
Yes, ma'am. Ownership.
Absolutely. So what tips do you have as it relates to salary negotiation?
So, you know, this is a big one about salary negotiation. Because for whatever reason, people get really uncomfortable when it comes to talking about money.
Money in general. It doesn't matter if it's in church. It doesn't matter if it's within a family. It doesn't matter if it's on the job. If you want to see tempers flare, and if you want to see people start moving and getting antsy, start talking about money. Right.
And Pastor, you know, I know you can talk to this. It's probably one of the most discussed topics in the Bible.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. Anytime I preach on tithe and offering and stewardship, things of that nature, I let people know the Bible speaks more about money than it does about prayer. The Bible speaks more about money than it speaks about faith. And so stewardship is a system. Just like God put systems in place for our bodies, you know, respiratory system, pulmonary system. He put a system in the earth for us to be able to sustain ourselves, for us to be able to keep the earth going and keep things moving. And stewardship is that system. And so when you begin to understand things in that perspective, it's something you need to talk about. There's no reason to be uncomfortable talking about it.
Absolutely. So it's people get really nervous. Uncomfortable on both ends. The employer and the employee. You know, absolutely. They get really frazzled when you talk about money. So so when it comes to negotiating salaries, there are three things that really go into play when we talk about negotiation.
Okay.
And so there's one, and I know that we have people that listen from all over for JRC, but really for the people who are in the Jackson area, I want to use an example that I think we can relate to that are in this area, and that example
I know
is
where you're going.
Coach Prime.
That's right. That's right.
Coach Prime. There was an article in the Clarion Ledger.
Absolutely.
About, I think it was the Clarion Ledger. About and if it's not, please don't get me. But there was an article somewhere that I saw about Coach Prime and the pay that he had warranted for his for bringing him to Jackson State University, and that's a HBCU. So there are three factors that really come into play when it comes to negotiating your salary. Those three factors are your individual equity. What do you bring to the table? What is it about you that's specific? What specific skills, attributes?
And we know for him, name recognition alone.
Oh my gosh.
He'll bring something.
Brand,
absolutely.
The things that he brings, the excitement, the things that he brings. Let's talk about his skill set that he brings. There's so many things that he brings.
Access to people, access to companies, access to so many things that the average coach may not have. So Coach Prime, I couldn't go and get that. Kind of, that kind of pay to be a coach at Jackson State University. You couldn't do. So when we talk about negotiation, that's one of the things that you really have to look at when you go into your position is, and that's really an example, but I want you to think about what is your individual equity into the organization. What unique skill sets do you offer the organization that you bring? So that's one example of what you need to have as far as your negotiating power. The second factor that I want you to think of when you get ready to discuss back to individual equity. Those SMART goals that we just talked about, that's what you want to have prepared when you talk about your individual equity. So you want to use your SMART goals because that should be objective. That shouldn't be subjective. That shouldn't be, well, I think I did this, or I believe I did this, or I think I'm this. No, that should be very factual information of what you did. And those SMART goals will help you get that. The second part is your internal equity. And the internal equity is what's going on within the organization. So the organization could really want to give you a raise, but if they don't have the funding to give you a raise, or if the salaries are the average salaries in that area, they don't really justify that, or what's going on within the organizational culture. So you really have to look at the internal equity. So that's very, very important. That's the second part that you have to look at. And people have to also understand salaries can only take up a certain percentage of an entire budget.
Absolutely.
That you can't spend 80% of your budget on salaries, And so that's something that sometimes employees may not understand, well, why can't we do this, or why? Because you've got to stay within certain percentages to have a budget that works for the organization as a whole.
Unless you have individual equity, like in Coach Prime's example, that will
where you're going to be bringing
absolutely.
So
they all come into play.
We know they're already seeing a major increase in season ticket sales.
Absolutely.
You're going to have a lot of other deals that come on the side. So yes, he's going to make money for Jackson State.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
So that's the second factor. And then the third factor is the external equity. So the external equity is what is going on in the marketplace. So I often hear people say, well, nurses in California make $70 an hour. Well, this is not California.
No. We don't have California's economy in Mississippi either.
So you cannot negotiate A California rate of pay
right.
in Mississippi.
Right.
So
the cost of living here is very different too.
The cost of living here is very different.
Yeah.
So all three of those things should come into play when you prepare to negotiate. Mm-hmm. So you really want to negotiate from a perspective of that objective data, and then support it with subjective data. Gotcha. After you've done all of those other things. Mm-hmm. And that's really the negotiation techniques that you should use, as opposed to because you feel like it. Mm-hmm. The other part of the negotiation technique is, I would say that during COVID, it's been a great opportunity for people to, I call it, identify what your potato is. Mm-hmm. And before we depended on jobs and different things like that, we bartered. And we looked for our unique skills and opportunities to do. And so I'd say that if the world economy crashed tomorrow, what would be your unique skill set? What would you barter with? What would be your potato?
That's right.
So if you don't get the higher salary, what's your bartering thing? What's your potato? Because a lot of times your no pushes you to look for those unique opportunities to subsidize in other ways.
Absolutely. We've seen a lot of people start businesses and pursue entrepreneurial endeavors during this time, just because, things have been so unstable. The future is yet unclear. We really don't even know how long we're going to be living in a COVID environment. Right. And so it has caused people to start saying, well, what's in my hand? Yes. Just like God asked Moses, what's in your hand? Absolutely. Everybody needs to be able to identify what is in your hand. What do you have that you can do that nobody else can do? What do you have that'll make the waters roll back? Those kinds of things. So let me ask you a question. We're talking about negotiating salaries. We're talking about bartering. Do you think women struggle with negotiating their value and their worth maybe more than men? We know there's been a lot of discussion in the world around us, even about equity between the salary of men and the salary of women. Do you think women tend to have a hard time, having that conversation and really being confident in communicating their value and their worth?
Pastor, I think that had someone have asked me that question maybe a year or two ago, I probably would have had a different answer. But now I think my answer have changed. I think that people struggle with us communicating that. And because people struggle with us, we have had to reposition to adjust to how people struggle with us. There are a lot of books on leadership and communication.
Absolutely.
Very few of them are written by women. So unfortunately, what works for men in business does not work for women.
It causes a woman to be now you're talking about it in the workplace, and I can speak to it from a ministry stance. If a woman is strong and independent, she's automatically called a Jezebel. By some leaders.
Well, let's talk about it.
Yes, this is break room conversation right here. And so a lot of things, like you're saying, that cause a man to be viewed as confident, as capable of leading, as one who is clear in their direction. Sometimes if a woman is strong, independent, clear in what she's called to do, clear sense of direction, that can be intimidating to other people. And many times women are viewed as controlling, manipulative, Jezebel. These are words we get called if we express those same right.
Those same behaviors.
So talk to us about that from an HR perspective in the workplace.
Yes, ma'am. So I think that thankfully, because we are starting to shift. It's beginning to shift.
Yeah. Who can get the job done?
Yes.
Who can get the job done, do it well, and take care of the people in the process of getting the job done. And that's not to say all men are bad or all women
Absolutely
are great,
not.
but
Absolutely
it's being able to see people as individuals rather than stereotyping people by groups. It happens with race. It happens with gender. It happens, you know, just in it happens with politics, you know, with parties and all of those kinds of things. And it's so detrimental because we're missing the uniqueness of each individual and what each individual is bringing to the table.
Unfortunately, we, meaning women, we have been our own enemies. It's not always been men.
I agree with that.
It has been sometimes women.
Absolutely.
Who have helped to assist in that stereotype. I've had women who have told me to talk softer, to smile more. Well, I grew up as a young girl. We didn't have a lot of money, and so I grew up with crooked teeth. And so I have straight teeth now, but they were crooked when I was a younger girl. So I didn't smile a lot. It wasn't because I was angry, but I was ashamed of my smile. Wow. So I just didn't smile a lot. And so people thought that I was mean. So as I grew up, I just didn't smile a lot. And so I had people tell me to, you know, to just smile. Well, the men weren't smiling,
right?
You know? So, and the women were telling me, you know, just smile. I have nothing against smiling. I think smiling is a good thing, by the way.
Especially when you're truly happy behind that smile.
Absolutely. But a lot of it came from women. And I think that now we're finally getting to having the real conversations about authenticity in women. And supporting women, and having these conversations about negotiation. We can strategize all we want about negotiating in women, but until we address the culture, then the culture will eat the strategy every day. And so I'm glad that we're finally changing the culture. And so for us in negotiation, I think that what we need to do is, one, find allies, and women allies and male allies.
Absolutely.
Find mentors, and find support in not just male authors, but female authors.
Absolutely.
Who can guide us through this, because leaning in, as you say, it doesn't always work for us. Right. It doesn't always work for us, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And that might be your next book. That it just might be. And for those who don't know, we've shared it on the show before, and we'll share it again. Dr. Hawkins has written a book on overcoming toxicity in the workplace. And it's a phenomenal resource. As a matter of fact, we're having her to come in and do some presentations for some of our staff members, but a phenomenal book. But you know, pray about that. That may be your next book.
It's the next one.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. But is there anything else that you would like to share today, whether it be just from professionalism in the workplace to anything related to HR? Anything?
No, the only thing I just want to say is just because we're having the conversations doesn't mean we're always having the conversations well.
Right.
So
with the right people.
Or with the right people.
Sometimes we're having the right conversations, but we're having them with the wrong people.
Wrong person, right. And you know what? Sometimes the break room is not
the
right place.
It's great that you and your employees, your coworkers have figured it out, but now you got to have that conversation with your employer.
Right. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So I'm just going to say, you know, take control and take accountability of your own career.
Absolutely.
You know, don't leave it to chance. And it's really up to you to really leverage that and have those courageous conversations. And thank you, Pastor, for for doing
Absolutely.
this and getting this before the people.
Absolutely. I'm always looking to get some practical things out to people. I believe that iron sharpens iron. I believe we should constantly be sharpening our skills. We should always be looking to learn. I'm a lifelong learner. I think that that's something everybody should just commit to is always learn. I want to learn something new every single day. And I want to always be reaching up to somebody who's ahead of me. I want to be reaching back to somebody who's coming behind me and reaching across to those who are walking with me. And I believe that the only way we do that is to make ourselves lifelong learners, and then to always be willing to teach others what we've learned for ourselves. So I believe you do a wonderful job at that, and I want to thank you. You always come with great substance. You come with good deliverables that we can measure what we've learned when we walk away from the conversation. So I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your love for the people of God. And thank you for coming to share a few moments with me in the break room.
Thank you.
Well, listen, I know that you guys have been blessed today. A lot of information has been discussed and shared. We're going to put some more information there at the bottom of the screen. And we're going to also let you know how you can get Dr. Hawkins' book and how you can contact her if you would like to contact her for any type of HR training that you may have. She's a busy lady, but I believe that she'll make some time for you. So we want to thank you guys. I pray that you've been blessed. And listen, if you are, take some time to share this with a friend, host a watch party on your page, and we're looking to join with you again next week, same time, same place. Until then, our sincere prayer is God's absolute best be yours in every area of your life. Y'all make today a great day. Love y'all. Bye-bye.